Glad you're here. Stick with me until the end, because the story I'm about to share will completely change how you view family, success, and the true cost of staying silent. When my mother called, Christmas was just 3 days away. Porch. Her voice had that typical, rehearsed quality. The fake tone of someone who's already made up her mind, but goes through the motions anyway just to pretend she's asking for your input. Isabella, she said. The quiet calm of Phoenix's wealthy neighborhoods, humming softly in the background. I think it's best if you don't come home for Christmas this year. Porch. Things are a bit tense right now, and if you're here, it's just going to make everyone feel awkward. I stood in the kitchen of my apartment in Denver, Colorado, holding the phone tight against my ear. The calendar on the fridge was staring right back at me. December 22nd. Porch. 3 days until their picture-perfect, Pinterest-style family Christmas gathering, and 3 days until my third consecutive year spending Christmas completely alone. I understand, Mom, I said calmly. Just those 4 words. At 35, I'd finally learned my lesson. Porch. I knew arguing with her would only make things worse, giving her even more fuel to tear me down in front of our relatives later on. What my mother didn't know, what none of them knew, was that 72 hours later, my face would be on the screen of every major financial news channel in the country. Porch. And when that happened, they'd finally realize what kind of empire I had built in that suffocating silence. During all those years, they completely cut me out of the family. The phone call lasted less than 4 minutes. When it comes to delivering disappointing news, Margaret Wright is always famously efficient. Porch. She systematically explained that my younger sister, Vanessa, and her husband, Derek, were going through some marriage troubles, and having an extra person around would just add to their stress. She even dangled a tiny crumb of comfort, saying maybe once things settled down in January, we could get together casually. An extra person. That's what she called me. Porch. Her eldest daughter, an extra person. I didn't interrupt. I just listened quietly to all her excuses. I'd heard countless versions of this exact speech before. Different holidays, different excuses, but the end result was always the same. Isabella doesn't fit in. Isabella makes things awkward. Isabella needs to stay far away. Porch. Well, she said with a tone of sheer relief when she finally finished. I knew you'd understand. You've always been the sensible one. The sensible one. That was her favorite label to toss at me. As if my silence meant agreement. As if refusing to cause a scene meant I was happily accepting my place as the outcast. Porch. We'll video call you on Christmas morning, she added, sounding entirely like an afterthought. And Isabella, if Vanessa texts you, please be nice. She's under a lot of pressure lately. Before I could reply, the line went dead. Porch. No, I love you. No, Merry Christmas. Just a cold, firm instruction to be nice to the sister who had spent a solid decade making sure the family doors stayed locked tight against me. 23 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Vanessa. She never missed an opportunity to take a swipe at me. Mom told me she called you, the text read. Honestly, it's probably for the best. Porch. You always make things so awkward, Isabella. You just sit there judging everyone while contributing nothing to this family. Maybe you can use this break to actually figure out your life? Get a real job or find a husband. Just a suggestion. Merry Christmas. At the end of the text, she added a red heart emoji, as if a little icon could disguise the stomach-turning bitterness in every single word. Porch. I read the message twice, letting those words hit the old, familiar scars inside me. They were ancient bruises, but they still knew how to ache. Vanessa was 31. Her husband, Derek, was a sharp-tongued corporate lawyer who looked at Excel spreadsheets with more passion than he ever looked at his own wife. Porch. They had 2 kids, a single-family house with a heated pool, and a 3-car garage in Scottsdale, Arizona. In my mother's eyes, she was the ultimate blueprint of a perfect daughter, and I was the cautionary tale. The crazy woman who quit a respectable banking job to chase some unrealistic tech fantasy. The aging spinster who chose ambition over an engagement ring, Porch. The outcast at family Thanksgiving dinners whose life relatives stopped asking about, simply because my answers never fit their conventional definition of success. I typed out a reply on my screen. "Thanks for your concern, Vanessa. Have a wonderful Christmas." Then I deleted it. I typed another line. "I've achieved things you couldn't reach in a lifetime." And I deleted that too. Porch. In the end, I sent nothing at all. Silence was my only weapon, and I wasn't about to hand it over tonight. I tossed my phone onto the kitchen counter and looked around my apartment. It wasn't huge, but it was clean. There was a second-hand couch I'd restored myself, and a massive desk overflowing with algorithm models, business plans, and signed non-disclosure agreements. Porch. The air carried the scent of black coffee, endless ambition, and a suffocating sense of solitude. No Christmas tree, no lights. Celebrating by yourself just felt pointless. Driven by some strange impulse, I opened Instagram. Vanessa's profile was right at the top of my feed, a new post she'd put up earlier that afternoon. Porch. The photo featured the luxurious living room of her Phoenix home, clearly designed by a professional decorator for the holiday season. A massive Christmas tree was covered in silver ornaments, with a warm amber fire crackling in the hearth. The whole family was dressed in matching, expensive cream-colored cashmere sweaters, sitting together on a coordinating sofa. Porch. Margaret sat right in the center, smiling like a queen. Derek had his arm around Vanessa's shoulders, and their two kids, dressed in matching Ralph Lauren outfits, were snuggled up on either side. Everyone was together. Except me. The caption read, "Prepping for Christmas Eve with all my heart. So grateful for family, for love, and for the traditions that truly matter. Blessed family first." Porch. It already had 147 likes, and the comment section was flooded with aunts and cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. What a beautiful family, the true definition of the American dream. So blessed, with all my heart. That's what she wrote. I wasn't in that picture, and I wasn't in her heart either. The saddest part was that I was already completely used to not existing to them. Porch. I closed the app and walked over to the fridge. Pinned tightly to the door with small magnets shaped like Colorado's snow-capped mountains were 11 drawings. They were crayon doodles of little stick figures with wild curly hair and huge bright smiles, surrounded by pink and purple hearts, and a rainbow stretching over a tiny house. Porch. Every single one of those drawings had been sent to me in secret, with no return address on the envelope. They were mailed directly to my company, then handed to me by the receptionist. An 8-year-old girl, carefully hiding her love for her aunt like it was some kind of contraband. I gently touched the edge of one drawing. Porch. Sophie and I were holding hands under a bright yellow sun, with crooked letters written beside us. "I love you, Auntie Bella. You're my favorite person." She'd been sending me these for 2 years. Birthday cards, holiday wishes, and little notes saying "I miss you," or "I wish you could come visit." Vanessa had no idea, or if she did, she pretended not to. Porch. Either way, Sophie had learned at a very young age that in this house, loving me was a crime that had to stay hidden. That broke my heart far more than any of my mother's polished excuses ever could. I walked over to my desk and flipped open my MacBook. The screen lit up, showing an unread email sitting right at the top of my inbox. Sender. Jonathan Mercer, CEO of Nexicare Health Systems Group. Porch. Subject. Final signature confirmation. Congratulations, Isabella. The message was brief. The board has officially approved the acquisition. $850 million in cash for your 35% stake. We will officially sign the final SEC disclosure documents tomorrow morning. Welcome to the next chapter of your life. I stared at those numbers on the screen for a very long time. Porch. My family thought I was just playing on the computer. They thought I was throwing away my Stanford degree, wasting my youth on some Silicon Valley pipe dream, constantly on the verge of bankruptcy. Porch. They had no idea that while they were excluding me from Christmas dinners, birthday parties, and Thanksgiving gatherings, I was busy writing the algorithms that would revolutionize early cancer detection in modern medicine. They didn't know that the moment I signed my name tomorrow, I would become one of the wealthiest self-made women in Colorado, if not the entire country. George. They didn't know simply because they had never actually cared enough to ask. My phone buzzed again. Another notification, this time from Forbes Media Relations. Subject: exclusive interview request, in-depth coverage of the acquisition. Ms. Wright, we would love to feature you on tomorrow's cover as one of the most influential women in Colorado's tech industry. George. I closed my laptop and looked out the window at the Denver skyline, where white snowflakes were quietly drifting down against the glass. They thought I was a worthless failure. But in 72 hours, the whole world would know my name, and my mother would end up calling me with a trembling voice, asking the one question she should have asked years ago. Is that really you? George. I didn't sleep a wink that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. My mother's phone call and Vanessa's text played on a loop in my head like a scratched record. But underneath those fresh wounds, deeper, much older scars were aching. That pain had nothing to do with the upcoming Christmas. It was about the entire decade that came before it. George. People sometimes ask me when my family stopped loving me. My answer is always the same. I don't think they ever stopped because they never truly started. At least, they never loved the real me. They loved the concept of a daughter. A quiet, obedient accessory who followed the script they wrote and stayed neatly on track within middle-class expectations. George. The moment I tore up that script, I became a total stranger to them. I reached out and opened the wooden box on my nightstand. Inside was a letter, its paper worn soft from years of being handled. It was written in my father's handwriting. To understand why that letter meant so much, you have to understand what I gave up back then, and the steep price I had to pay. George. 10 years ago, I was 25. Back then, I had my own corner office at First Mountain Bank in Phoenix. I was a junior financial analyst, fast-tracked for senior management with a six-figure salary well within reach. I was living the exact life my mother envisioned. Responsible, stable, secure, with a flawless credit score. George. But sitting in that office every day, I felt like I was drowning in slow motion. I'd sit in carpeted conference rooms, listening to executives, throw around Wall Street jargon about quarterly margins, while my mind drifted straight to the notebook, hidden deep inside my desk drawer. George. It was packed with algorithms, data models, and questions about patterns in medical data. Questions no one else was asking at the time. I'd been secretly researching it for 2 years, studying how predictive AI analytics could spot chronic diseases long before physical symptoms ever showed up. The science fascinated me, and the life-saving potential kept me awake at night. Then Dr. Ellen Graves called me. She was a former professor of mine from Stanford and the first person to see potential in me that I hadn't even recognized myself. Isabella, she said over the phone, I saved a spot for you in a health tech startup incubator in Silicon Valley. Your research model is exactly what the medical field needs right now, but you have to go all in. It's now or never. George. That afternoon, as I sat in that climate-controlled banking office, those words echoed endlessly in my head. Now or never, I knew exactly what I had to do. I walked into my department manager's office and handed him my resignation letter. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Do you have any idea how big of a mistake you're making, Isabella? George. Leaving a job like this after everything we went through with the financial crash? You'll never get an opportunity like this again. I know, I told him. That's why I have to take this chance while I can. I didn't feel brave at all. In truth, I was terrified. George. But for the first time in my life, I felt like I was choosing my own path. Instead of sleepwalking down a road someone else had paved for me, I packed up my desk and checked my phone. Vanessa's text was already waiting. Mom told me you quit. Have you completely lost your mind? I didn't reply. I knew what kind of storm was waiting for me at home. George. The drive back to my parents' house felt infinitely longer than usual. I rehearsed what I wanted to say over and over in my head. How I'd explain my vision, my AI research, and its potential to save countless lives. I imagined them listening, really listening, and finally understanding what I was meant to become. But I never even got the chance to speak. Before I could even sit down on the living room couch, my mother started in on me. "I heard what you did," she snapped, her voice sharp and her eyes ice cold. "Please tell me this isn't true." "Mom, let me explain." "Explain what?" "Explain how you threw away a perfect, high-paying career for some unrealistic fantasy?" "Do you have any idea how many connections I used, how hard I worked to land you that job at the bank? And you just quit?" She stood over me with her arms crossed, her anger rolling over me like a tidal wave. "What are you planning to do now?" "Go to Silicon Valley and play on computers with a bunch of nerds." "Start some useless company in a garage and come crawling back, broke 6 months later?" I tried to interject, but she cut me off completely. "I didn't sacrifice everything raising you just to watch you turn into this, Isabella. I taught you to be practical, to be smart, to plan for your future. And now you're throwing it all away for some ridiculous pipe dream." Vanessa sat at the dining table with a subtle, mocking smile, watching the whole thing unfold. She was 21 then, freshly engaged to Derek while he was in law school, already showing off the flashy ring on her finger like a trophy. "I always knew Isabella thought she was too special to live a normal life," Vanessa said softly. "Some of us just want a quiet, happy life." After all, not everyone needs to act like a genius. The way she said the word genius made it sound like an insult. At that moment, Aunt Barbara was calling from the East Coast, her voice echoing over the speakerphone on the table. "I told you, Margaret, she's been stubborn ever since she was a little girl." In the family group chat, the one group chat I was excluded from, my cousins were probably texting frantically, "Did you hear about Isabella? Such a shame, she had so much potential." I just sat there in silence, watching my family pick my life choices apart like a failed experiment. My mother listed every single sacrifice she had ever made for me, while Vanessa counted every moment I had ever embarrassed her. I said nothing, because no matter what I said, none of them were listening. Amid all that noise and accusation, only one person remained completely silent. My father, Henry. He sat at the head of the table, watching me with a complex expression I couldn't quite read. When that public execution of a dinner finally ended and everyone scattered, he caught my arm in the hallway. "Stay," he said softly. "I want to talk to you." We walked out to the back porch and sat on the wooden swing where he used to hold me and read storybooks when I was little. It was on that very swing that he'd taught me the world was vast. Far bigger than our house, bigger than Phoenix, bigger than anything my mother could ever imagine. The desert night was quiet, lit by a blanket of stars, and then my father said the words I had been longing to hear my entire life. "Tell me about your idea, Bella. Really tell me. Not the polished version you prepared for your mother." So I told him everything. The algorithms, the medical data patterns, and how machine learning could catch the faintest signs of disease years before clinical symptoms ever showed up. It wasn't just business, it was the promise of saving people who would otherwise be lost to misdiagnosis or delay. When I finished, tears welled up in his deep-set eyes. "Your grandmother—" "My mother—" "She passed away from pancreatic cancer," he said, his voice raspy. "By the time the doctors found it, she only had 3 months left. If only someone could have caught it sooner." He paused, turning to look at me. "Isabella, if you can really build what you're talking about, you're going to save so many people like her. You're going to save thousands of families." He took my hand, holding it just like he did when I was a little girl scared of thunderstorms. "Don't listen to your mother," he said. "And don't listen to Vanessa. They're just afraid of things they don't understand. Bella, you have a fire inside you. I've seen it ever since you were a little girl. Follow that fire, even if it burns everything around it to ash." "What if I fail, Dad?" "Then at least you failed trying to do something that truly matters, that already makes you greater than most people in this world." He pulled me into a hug. It was a real hug. The kind that conveys strength far beyond what words can express. "I believe in you," he whispered in my ear. "I will always believe in you." 2 years later, Henry Wright passed away. March. It happened on a Tuesday morning in March. A sudden heart attack. No warning signs, no final words. He was only 62. I flew back to Phoenix like a ghost, standing by his headstone as they lowered his casket into the earth. The only person in the world who believed in me was gone forever. March. After the funeral, my mother cornered me in the kitchen of their home. Or rather, her home now, since there was nothing left there for me. "He was constantly worrying about you," she said, her voice icy cold as she struggled to suppress her emotions. "Every single night he'd ask if you were doing okay, if you had enough money, if that silly little company of yours was going to survive." March. She looked at me with pure disdain. "Watching you struggle so painfully did nothing good for his heart, Isabella." She didn't say the words "you killed him" outright, but she didn't need to. Vanessa appeared behind her out of nowhere, her arms crossed. "Mom's right. Dad was always defending you, always making excuses for your irresponsible choices. March. If you had just been normal, he wouldn't have had to spend the last years of his life worrying himself to death over you." That night, I left without saying goodbye. I drove straight to the airport and flew back to Denver. At the time, my company was desperately fighting for survival. I had only 3 employees, an impossibly cramped office, and my savings were almost completely drained. And just when I felt like I couldn't hold on any longer, I didn't even have a father to call anymore. A week later, I received the letter. It had been forwarded to my mailbox from my parents' address. The envelope bore my father's handwriting, containing just a single sheet of paper dated 3 weeks before he passed away. "My dearest Bella, if you're reading this, I'm probably no longer around. March. I'm so sorry I couldn't tell you this in person. I know the road ahead is going to be incredibly tough, and I know they won't make it easy for you. But please, never let them put out the light in your eyes. You are destined to achieve something extraordinary. I have never doubted that for a second. Whenever you start to doubt yourself, remember this. I chose to believe in you, and I was right. March. I am already so proud of you. Love, Dad." I've read that letter 1,000 times, on the hardest days, through lonely nights, and during every single Christmas I spent alone. It was the one reason I never gave up. Which is why, when my mother finally saw my face on the news, the emotion I felt was something I never expected. It wasn't a rush of victory, nor the satisfaction of revenge. It was just a deep, profound sadness. Because the one person who should have been there to see it all was already gone. I closed the wooden box containing my father's letter and placed it back on the nightstand. December 23rd. The pale, cold morning sunlight filtered through my apartment window. It had been 8 years since Henry passed away. 8 years of building an empire in total silence. Today, everything was about to change. Grief doesn't just vanish. It simply learns to share space with other emotions. Facing every obstacle, through every setback, on countless nights when I almost gave up, I carried my father's trust like a second heart. With every core algorithm I wrote, every venture capitalist who turned me down, every moment I questioned, if I had gone crazy, I could hear his voice. "You are destined to achieve something extraordinary." He was right. I just wished he were here to see it with his own eyes. I took a shower and put on my finest custom dark gray suit, professional, yet understated. Checking my phone, I saw 17 emails from my legal team, accounting firm, and board members, alongside a text from Marcus Chen, "Big day, don't be late." Deep breaths. I grabbed my car keys and drove downtown. The headquarters of MedInsight Analytics occupied the 14th floor of an unassuming office building on 17th Street in Denver. There were no flashy tech campuses like in Silicon Valley, no beanbag chairs or ping-pong tables. Just functional workspaces, whiteboards covered in mathematical equations, and coffee cups scattered in every corner. I liked it that way. Substance over style, results over appearances. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped into the world I built with my own hands. Orch. As I walked past, 43 employees looked up from their screens. Engineers were buried in lines of code, data scientists were debating machine learning models, and a small sales team in the corner was making calls. Walking down the hallway, everyone waved or nodded in my direction. "Good morning, boss. Big day, right? We're all rooting for you." Orch. These people had staked their careers on my vision. Some had been with me from the very start, back when we couldn't even pay full salaries, and I could only offer companies stock options that looked like worthless paper at the time. And now, those options were about to bring them life-changing wealth. "I built this. I told myself as I walked through the office. Orch. Every hire, every algorithm, every hospital partnership, every sleepless night, and every seemingly impossible decision. 7 years ago, this company was just a dream written in a notebook. 5 years ago, it was just Marcus and me crammed into a rundown garage, surviving on instant ramen and sheer determination. 3 years ago, we landed our very first official hospital contract. And today, we were about to be acquired at a valuation of over $1 billion. I found Marcus Chen in his corner office. He was staring at his laptop with a quiet, focused composure that belonged to a man who had weathered storms far greater than this one. At 52, with graying hair, he carried an effortless confidence that proved he had nothing left to show off to the world. He used to be the chief technology officer at Rayborn Health Systems, one of the largest medical tech companies in the country. But he walked away from $1 million salary and secure status to stake everything on a 28-year-old nobody who had big ideas but couldn't even draft a proper business plan. There she is. He looked up and smiled. The star of the show. I sat across from his desk. "I feel like I'm going to throw up." "Good. That means you realize the weight of what's about to happen." I met Marcus 7 years ago at the Stanford Medical Innovation Conference. I had just turned 28, still grieving my father's death, standing before a room full of skeptical Silicon Valley venture capitalists to present my research. Those investors had decided I was wasting their time before I even opened my mouth. My voice shook as I stumbled through the presentation slides. My data was solid, but my presentation skills were embarrassingly amateur. Everyone passed. Too risky. Too ambitious. Who was this nobody from Denver, coming in with a pile of algorithms and big dreams? But after the room cleared out, one man stayed behind. He asked a few questions, real technical questions, that showed he completely understood what I was trying to build. We went out for coffee. 3 hours later, he made me an offer that changed my life. "Your algorithms are rough," he said back then, "and your business plan is an absolute mess. But your core concept could transform modern medicine. I'm in. Let's build this together." Marcus brought experience, connections, and industry credibility. I brought the vision, the core algorithms, and the relentless drive my father cherished. The very drive my mother had tried so hard to extinguish. We argued often, but we maintained absolute respect for one another. He became the mentor I never knew I needed, stepping into a fatherly role after my own dad passed away. Now, Marcus looked at me with the exact expression he wore whenever he was about to say something he knew I wouldn't want to hear. "You've got that look on your face again," he said, "the look you get whenever you think about your family." I stiffened. "I'm fine." "You don't have to pretend you're fine. This is a monumental moment, and the people who should be celebrating with you aren't here." "Did you ever tell them about this?" "They never asked." He nodded slowly, as if that answer confirmed what he had already suspected. "Tell me again," he said. "Tell me about what we built. Before we sign, I want to hear you say it." I knew his trick. He was grounding me, reminding me why this mattered so much so I wouldn't get overwhelmed by the immediate pressure. MedInsight Analytics develops predictive AI algorithms for early disease detection. I took a deep breath and began. By analyzing patterns across massive patient datasets, we uncover clues invisible to the naked eye. Tiny markers in blood panels, imaging data, genetic profiles. Orch. Connections that would take a human doctor years to map out, our system identifies in seconds. Our algorithms can spot traces of pancreatic cancer 18 months earlier than traditional screening methods. They can predict heart disease before the first cough or chest tightness ever occurs, and screen for diabetes in patients who don't fit typical risk profiles. Orch. We're currently deployed in 37 hospitals across 12 states. Over the past 4 years, our tech has flagged more than 8,000 patients needing early intervention. It's impossible to count how many lives have been saved. But the thank you letters from patient families already fill an entire drawer in my office. Orch. I built this for my grandmother, who passed away from pancreatic cancer before I was born. And I built it for my father, who was taken by a sudden heart attack at 62, with no warning and no time for doctors to save him. If MedInsight had existed 20 years ago, maybe they'd both still be here today. This is what I built during all those years my family treated me like a failure. Orch. This is everything they never bothered to understand. Marcus nodded. And now, Nexicare is going to roll our technology out to 200 hospitals nationwide by 2027. 200 hospitals, millions of patients. All because you refused to give up back then. My eyes welled up, but I forced myself to blink the tears away. Because we refused to give up. Same thing. He smiled and stood up. Orch. Come on. Let's go make history. We walked side by side down the hallway toward the boardroom. Employees lined both sides, some clapping softly, others giving thumbs up and whispering words of encouragement. These people chose to believe in me when the rest of the world doubted me. Long before anyone validated my technology, they trusted me with their futures. Orch. The M&A legal team from Skadden's New York office was already waiting inside. Stacks of thick documents were neatly arranged across the mahogany conference table. The large video display on the wall was lit up, ready to connect with Nexicare's headquarters in Manhattan. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Orch. That morning, I had thought about calling my mother, telling her everything before the rest of the world found out. I even rehearsed the words in my head. Mom, I'm about to become a multi-millionaire. I built a company that saves lives. Are you proud of me now? But I knew what her answer would be. Probably some dismissive comment like, that's nice, but when are you getting married? Orch. So I didn't call. Just as I had done for the past decade, I walked into that conference room alone. The phone in my pocket buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but instinct nudged me to check. It was Sophie. She must have quietly borrowed Vanessa's iPad again. Good luck today, Auntie Bella. Orch. I don't fully understand what you're working on, but Mom said you have a big meeting today. Hope everything goes great. I love you. I stared at those words from my 8-year-old niece. She was the only person in my family who gave me unconditional love, the only one who wished me luck even without knowing the details. I quickly texted back. Thank you, sweetheart. I love you too. Orch. Sliding my phone back into my pocket, I took a deep breath and turned to face the screen. The video call connected, and Jonathan Mercer appeared on screen. At 60, with silver hair, he was the kind of top executive who built a massive corporate empire through sheer discipline and vision. He looked at me through the screen, smiling with the mutual respect shared between creators. Miss Orch. Right, he said. After 8 long months of negotiations, I have to say, you are one of the toughest negotiators I have ever come across. I learned from the best. I glanced at Marcus, who gave a subtle nod. Then let's seal the deal, Mercer said. $850 million for your 35% stake. The moment you sign, you become one of the wealthiest self-made women in Colorado. Orch. The lawyers slid the documents toward me, uncapping the pens. As I picked up the pen, every eye in the room locked onto my hand. My father's words echoed clearly in my mind. You are destined to achieve something extraordinary. In that moment, I wasn't thinking about the money. Orch. I was thinking about every person who told me I would fail. Every Christmas dinner I wasn't invited to. the text from Vanessa telling me to get a real job, and every time my mother looked at me with disappointment instead of pride. I signed my name on the line. Everything I had built in silence was finally an unshakable reality. Little did I know, in less than 48 hours, that silence would shatter completely. My family would finally be forced to face the truth they had chosen to ignore for so long, and our relationship would never be the same again. December 24th, Christmas Eve. I stood in the apartment building's elevator, watching the numbers climb up to the 7th floor. 24 hours had passed since I put my signature on the document that brought my net worth to $850 million. My hand could still feel the weight of that pen, the absolute sense of finality that came with signing my name. The elevator doors slid open, and I walked down the hallway toward my door. The exact same hallway I'd walked 1,000 times, the same door, the same lock, and the same cramped space waiting on the other side. I had spent 7 long years dreaming of this moment, fighting for it and sacrificing everything to reach it, but now that it was actually here, I felt nothing at all. I did feel something. I just didn't know how to define it yet. The apartment was exactly as I had left it this morning. Small, silent, and empty. No Christmas tree in the corner, no stockings hanging up, not a single festive decoration. Just a suffocating stillness, the low hum of the refrigerator compressor, and the pale winter twilight filtering through the windows. I set down my bag, kicked off my heels, and walked into the kitchen to open a bottle of wine, an expensive Cabernet Sauvignon from Napa Valley that I'd been saving for a special occasion. I poured a glass, walked over to the couch, and sat down, a newly minted multimillionaire, sitting alone on Christmas Eve, drinking by herself. If this were Los Angeles or New York, there'd probably be a support group for lonely, wealthy people. If the whole situation weren't so pathetic, I might have laughed out loud. The numbers in my bank account were real, and my business accomplishments were real, but this hollow feeling was just as real. Achievements mean nothing when you have no one to share them with. Victory feels utterly empty when the people who should be celebrating with you don't even know it happened. I took a heavy sip of wine, then did something I knew I shouldn't do. I opened Instagram again. Vanessa's profile was right at the top of my feed, featuring a new post from 2 hours ago. The photo showed the same expertly decorated living room in Phoenix. A massive Christmas tree was covered in white lights, and the whole family was gathered on the cream-colored sofa in matching holiday outfits. Margaret sat in the middle. Derek had his arm around Vanessa, and the kids were snuggled up beside them. Perfect, happy, united. The caption read, "Christmas Eve with all my heart. So grateful for family. Merry Christmas." I wasn't in that picture, and I wasn't in her heart either. I scrolled through the comments, letting every single one twist the knife. Then, I spotted a comment that made me freeze in place. It had been posted 3 minutes ago by Sophie. "I wish Auntie Bella was here. I miss her." My breath caught in my throat. An 8-year-old child actually had the courage to say out loud the truth that every adult in this family was too afraid to admit. I refreshed the page. The comment was gone. Deleted. In less than 3 minutes, someone had wiped it out. It had to be Vanessa. She couldn't allow anything to ruin her picture-perfect family portrait, nor could she let anyone question why her sister was absent from the frame. I closed the app and threw my phone onto the couch. My hands were shaking. Not from anger, but from something much deeper, a profound and desperate grief. For years, Sophie had been reaching out to me in secret from inside that suffocating home. Birthday cards mailed straight to my office, crayon drawings signed to Auntie Bella, and video messages recorded on her iPad when her parents weren't looking. She treated her love for me like contraband. She was the only right who hadn't given up on me, and I hadn't seen her in person for nearly 2 years. Vanessa had made sure of that, keeping her locked away from me. I walked into the bedroom and opened the nightstand drawer. Inside was a thick folder packed with everything Sophie had secretly sent me over the past 2 years. I tipped it over, spilling its contents onto the bed. A drawing of a stick figure with wild curly hair laughing. "You're my favorite aunt." Porch. A house with a rainbow over it. "I love you, Auntie Bella. Come home soon." A solitary figure standing by a tree. "This is you. You look sad and I want to make you happy." Every single drawing was a window into the world my niece saw. She understood the truth those adults refused to admit. In this family, Sophie was the only one who truly saw me. Porch. At the very bottom of the drawer was a postcard I'd received just last week. Her handwriting was getting neater. She was growing up. "Merry Christmas, Auntie Bella. I drew a star for you, because even if other people can't see it, you're still shining. Love, Sophie." And right beneath it was a small postscript. "Please don't be sad." Porch. I pressed the postcard against my chest, letting the tears fall freely. A woman who had just signed an $850 million deal was completely broken by a little girl's crayon star. The phone on the couch began to vibrate. I wiped my eyes and walked over to look. It was Marcus. I picked up immediately. "Aren't you supposed to be popping champagne right now?" he asked, a subtle smile evident in his voice. Porch. "I'm sitting here alone, drinking red wine and lurking on my family's Instagram party," I replied. "The party I wasn't invited to." There was a pause on the line. "Isabella, I know I shouldn't look, but I can't help it." In the background, I could hear laughter, kids playing, and the warm commotion of a happy family gathering. Porch. He was in Hawaii with his wife, kids, and grandkids, living the kind of normal life I could never build for myself. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "Everything you accomplished today, everything you built, your father would be so incredibly proud of you." A heavy silence followed. I couldn't bring myself to speak. "Did you hear me, Isabella?" Porch. "He's the only one who would be," I managed to say, my voice cracking despite my best efforts. "My mother thinks I wasted my life, and my sister thinks I'm a joke. When the news hits tomorrow, they'll finally know the truth. They'll finally see what they refuse to look at. And isn't that what you wanted? For them to finally understand?" I thought about that for a long moment. Porch. "I don't know what I want anymore." Marcus was quiet for a second before saying something that would stay with me for the rest of my life. "Isabella, you didn't build all of this to prove them wrong. You built it because it's real, because it saves lives, and because it actually matters. Whether they choose to see it or not doesn't change that truth. Logically, I get it, Marcus. I really do." Porch. "But I'm 35 years old. I'm worth nearly $900 million, and deep down, I'm still just that little girl waiting to hear her mother say, 'I'm proud of you.'" Another long silence stretched between us. "Give them time," he said softly. "This is a massive shock for anyone to process, especially in a complicated family like yours. Porch. If they still can't understand it in the end, then you'll just have to find another way to make your peace. You've done it before. Go get some sleep, and call me tomorrow if you need anything, and Isabella. Merry Christmas. I'm proud of you, even if they aren't." The line went dead. I sat alone in the dark apartment as his words echoed through the empty space. Porch. I pulled out my father's letter and read it one more time. "I chose to believe in you, and I was right. I am already so proud of you." I traced the ink of his handwriting with my finger. "I did it, Dad," I whispered into the quiet room. "I wish you were here to see it." Porch. "I wish you could see what your trust built." A tear dripped onto the paper and I carefully wiped it away, protecting his words from my grief. The TV was on in the background with the volume turned low, serving as background noise to break the dead silence. But right then, a news tease caught my attention. Porch. A polished news anchor appeared on screen with a bold graphic behind her. "Exuke's breaking news, coming up after the break," she said in an enthusiastic broadcast voice. "A Colorado tech startup makes history. A massive acquisition deal valued at $1.2 billion overall. Who is the mystery co-founder about to become America's newest billionaire?" Porch. My photo flashed across the screen, the formal corporate headshot from our company website. "A special Christmas morning report, debuting nationwide tomorrow. You won't want to miss it. The anchor smiled. My phone immediately started buzzing out of control. Emails and interview requests from journalists, PR firms, and venture capital firms began pouring in like a blizzard. But nothing from my family. Not a single message from Phoenix. They still didn't know. Tomorrow they would find out along with the rest of the world. I turned off the TV and sat in the dark. Outside, Denver was buried under a fresh blanket of snow. From somewhere in the city, the sound of Christmas church bells began to ring. Christmas was here. In a few short hours, as the sun rose, the name Isabella Wright would be plastering screens across the country. In that house in Phoenix, my mother would see my face on her television. I had no idea what would happen then, if she'd call, or what she'd say. All I knew was that after 35 years of being invisible, I was about to be thrust directly into their view. On Christmas morning, I was woken up by the relentless vibration of my phone on the coffee table. It wasn't a standard buzz. It was a frantic, continuous hum, as if the device had come alive and was desperately demanding attention. I opened my eyes and stared blankly at the ceiling, my neck stiff and aching from sleeping on the couch. My father's letter was still clutched tightly in my hand. Pale morning light flooded the apartment. I reached out a clumsy hand and grabbed my phone. The screen lit up with a string of surreal notifications. 47 missed calls. 231 text messages. Over 1,000 unread emails. For a split second, I thought something terrible had happened. Did someone pass away? Was there an emergency? What could possibly cause 47 people to call me all at once on Christmas morning? Then my head cleared. I remembered the deal. I remembered the news breaking today. I sat up straight, my heart racing. The very first text was from Marcus. Turn on any news channel, you're everywhere. With trembling hands, I grabbed the remote. The moment the TV screen flickered on, I saw my own face staring right back at me. CNBC was running a special segment. A well-dressed anchor sat behind the desk. Being called one of the most remarkable success stories of the year, she said. Colorado-based MedInsight Analytics was officially acquired yesterday by healthcare giant Nexicare in a deal valued at $1.2 billion. My photo filled the screen. Co-founder Isabella Wright, 35, holds a 35% stake in the company, placing her net worth at over $850 million in cash. This catapults her to becoming one of the youngest self-made female billionaires in American history. I sat frozen on the couch, watching strangers on television talk about my life as if it were a legend. I flipped to Fox Business, a true triumph of the American dream. Built from the ground up in a garage in just 7 short years. I flipped to the local Denver station. Colorado's very own Isabella Wright proves that world-class tech innovation isn't just happening in Silicon Valley. My face was on every channel. My name dominated every headline. And the only thought in my mind was, my mother is about to see this. I opened my laptop and went straight to Forbes. The main banner read in bold print, "Meet Isabella Wright, the healthcare visionary who just became a billionaire." The article traced my entire journey. Stanford University, the banking job I left behind, and the early garage days with Marcus. It included quotes from former colleagues and mentors. "Isabella is the most determined person I've ever met," Dr. Ellen Graves said in her quote. "From the moment I met her, I knew she was going to transform medicine. I'm just grateful I got to see it happen." There was an entire paragraph dedicated to MedInsight's impact. Over 8,000 early disease detections and countless lives extended. Everything I had fought for was right there in black and white, validated by the entire world. Then, I reached a line near the end of the article that made my breath stop completely. When asked about her support system during the company's toughest moments, Wright kept details private. "I had incredible mentors and colleagues," she said in a recent interview. "They believed in me when it counted most." No mention of family because there was nothing to mention. When the reporter asked about my support system, I couldn't even offer the name of a single blood relative. Not to protect their privacy, but because they simply never existed in my support system to begin with. I scrolled down to the comment section, which already had hundreds of responses. Orch. My daughter is in medical school, struggling with imposter syndrome every day, one comment read. I just sent her this article. Thank you, Miss Wright, for showing her what's possible. This is what happens when you have the courage to bet on yourself. Absolutely incredible. Strangers were cheering for me, inspired by my story. People I had never met were drawing strength from my journey. Orch. Yet, my phone screen remained completely devoid of any missed calls from Phoenix. My mother hadn't reached out. My sister hadn't reached out. The family that locked me out on Christmas remained dead silent while the rest of the world celebrated my name. By noon, I had completed 3 media interviews over the phone. By 1 in the afternoon, my inbox held over 2,000 unread emails. Orch. By 2, I received congratulations from the governor of Colorado, 2 U.S. senators, and a Silicon Valley tech icon I had looked up to for years. By 3 in the afternoon, my family still hadn't called. I forced myself to pretend I didn't care, but wanting them to call and needing them to call were 2 very different things. Orch. I desperately wanted them to reach out first, to take that first step and prove I was at least worth picking up the phone for. At 3:45 p.m., as I stood by the window watching the snow fall, my phone rang. Not a text, an actual incoming call. I stared at the screen, my heart skipping a beat. Against the dark background, a single contact name flashed in white. Mom. Orch. My thumb hovered right over the green accept button. The phone vibrated in my palm like a pounding pulse. I had waited 10 long years for this call, dreamed about it, and dreaded it in equal measure. Now it was finally here, and I had no idea what I wanted her to say. I took a deep breath, hit answer, and brought the phone to my ear. Hello. Total silence on the other end. Orch. Just the soft sound of breathing. Then my mother's voice came through, shaky, uncertain, and completely stripped of the cold authority she had used 3 days ago when telling me not to come home. Isabella, she said, I just saw you on the news. Another pause followed. I waited patiently. Is that? She stopped, swallowed hard, and tried again. Is that really you? 4 words. Orch. After 10 years of ignoring me, 10 years of treating me like a family embarrassment, and 10 years of silent treatment. Just those 4 words. Is that really you? As if she had never actually known me. Maybe that was the core issue, she really never knew me. It's me, Mom, I said calmly. Another long silence stretched across the line. Orch. I could hear her desperately trying to process the information, attempting to bridge the gap between the daughter she considered a failure and the billionaire who had just graced national television. The cognitive dissonance was simply too massive for her to digest. I didn't offer her an easy out. I wasn't going to make this simple for her. Orch. For the first time in my adult life, I held complete control over our dynamic, and I had no intention of handing it back. Isabella, she finally managed to squeeze out, I don't understand. The TV says you built a company, a massive healthcare company. They're saying you're worth hundreds of millions of dollars? 850 million. Cash deal, I corrected her flatly. Orch. Dead silence returned. The number hung between us like an unexploded bomb, impossibly large and completely undeniable. How is this possible? Why didn't you tell us? There it was. The exact question I had been waiting for. Not congratulations, not I'm so proud of you, and not I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. Just an accusation disguised as a question. Why didn't you tell us? Orch. As if my silence were a failure on my part, as if I owed them information they had never bothered to ask about. Beyond that, under SEC regulations, I was bound by strict NDAs before the acquisition disclosure, making it legally impossible to share details anyway. But legalities aside, this wasn't a legal issue. It was an attitude issue. You never asked, Mom. What do you mean, I never asked? Orch. Of course I cared about your life. No, you cared about when I was getting married. You cared about why I couldn't be more like Vanessa. You cared about when I was going to get a real job. But you never once asked about the research I was doing. That's not fair, Isabella. I always wanted to know what you were working on. Is that so? Then when was the last time you asked about my progress? George, when was the last time you asked what MedInsight actually did? Mom, before today, you couldn't even name my company, could you? She didn't answer. Her silence was all the confirmation I needed. She had no defense because there was none to offer. For 10 years, she had been comfortably oblivious to my life, focusing only on how I disappointed her. George. Now she was realizing that her disappointment was built entirely on her own ignorance, and that the daughter she discarded had built a corporate empire right beneath her nose. I heard a faint sniffle through the receiver, the warning sign that she was on the verge of breaking down. Isabella! Her voice cracked, filled with an intense emotion she usually kept hidden. I am your mother. George, I have a right to know about something this huge. I have a mother's right. Despite my pounding heart, I kept my voice completely measured. Mom, just 3 days ago, you told me not to come home for Christmas. You said my presence would make everyone uncomfortable. That was different. I didn't realize things were like this. George, you didn't know because you never wanted to know. She broke into full tears. Sobbing echoed across the line, raw and unstable. I didn't mean to hurt you, Isabella. I just wanted to keep the peace at home. Vanessa and Derek were having marriage problems, and I thought if you weren't there, things would be easier. Easier? Meaning it was easier to pretend I didn't exist? George, easier to celebrate with the daughter you were proud of, without having to face the daughter who disappointed you? That's not what I meant. If that's not what you meant, then explain it to me. Mom, explain to me how excluding me from every single holiday for 3 straight years was supposed to make me feel welcome. George, how was I supposed to believe you cared when every single action told me to stay away? Her sobbing grew heavier. An old part of me, the part that had spent 35 years begging for her approval, wanted to comfort her. But a stronger part held me firmly in place. Tears aren't going to change what happened, Mom. They won't erase 10 years of treating me like air. George. I didn't know it was that bad, Isabella. I swear I didn't. How could you not know? At the very beginning, I tried to explain my research models, my startup, and how much our work meant to medicine. You were the one who stopped calling. You pulled away first. I stopped calling because every conversation felt so painful, and I pulled away because staying near you was destroying me. George. Mom, did you ever once wonder why I stopped trying to get close? Or were you just relieved? The question landed like a sharp slap. I heard her gasp for air as she was forced to face the truth she had avoided for a decade. I was never relieved, she whispered. I just missed you. Then why didn't you come looking for me? Why didn't you fight for me? George. She had no answer. Only more tears as she finally realized that her neglect had brought about consequences she could never undo. As Margaret's crying slowly subsided, her tone shifted subtly into a familiar pattern that began to emerge from the chaos. Isabella, she said, let's not dwell on the past. What matters now is that you've accomplished something wonderful. We should celebrate. We? George. Yes, as a family. You should come back to Phoenix. We can have a proper Christmas dinner. Everyone would love to see you. A cold feeling washed over my chest. This was her classic move. Whenever reality became uncomfortable, she would attempt to skip past it, rewrite the narrative, and pretend that acknowledging a problem was the same as fixing it. George, you mean everyone would love to see the billionaire? That's not what I mean. 3 days ago, I was shut out because I'd make people uncomfortable. Now, suddenly everyone wants to celebrate with me. People make mistakes, Isabella. I made a mistake. Can't we just move past this? This is your game, Mom. George. You constantly rewrite history, casting yourself as the victim or the hero, but never the person who caused the harm. You say, don't dwell on the past, as if an invitation to dinner can erase 10 years of emotional neglect. A sudden commotion broke out in the background. The audio was muffled, but I recognized the voice immediately. Mom, what is she saying? Let me talk to her. It was Vanessa. George. Margaret yelled back. Not right now, Vanessa. Give me the phone. I want to talk to my sister. My stomach churned at the word sister, as if it held any real meaning to her now, as if there were still a relationship left between us to save. After a scramble of rustling clothes and static, my sister's voice came through, upbeat, eager, and completely ignoring the damage she had caused. Isabella. Orch. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Why didn't you tell us sooner? The exact same question delivered with the same self-entitlement, blaming my silence on arrogance while brushing off a decade of her own cruel remarks. Hello, Vanessa. This is insane. My sister is a billionaire. Orch. Derek is losing his mind. He keeps saying we need to sit down with you to talk about investment and wealth management opportunities. I let out a cold laugh. The motives didn't take long to surface. So that's why you grabbed the phone? To talk about wealth management? What? No. I called because I'm your sister, and I just found out you're famous like a celebrity. Orch. Did you call because 3 days ago you texted me saying I always make things awkward and told me to get a real job? Looks like I finally found one. I didn't mean it like that back then. Then what did you mean, Vanessa? Because it sounded an awful lot like you wanted me to disappear. Isabella, come on. We're sisters. Sisters fight. It doesn't mean anything. Orch. It meant everything to me, I said coldly. You really are a fantastic actress. Goodbye. Vanessa. Wait! Isabella, don't hang up. I heard Margaret grab the phone back. Isabella, please don't hang up. If you just come back to Phoenix, we can talk face to face, okay? Give me one good reason to come back. Because I am your mother. Because despite everything, I love you. Orch. And? Her voice broke again. Because if your father were still here, he would want us to try to fix this. I froze entirely. My father. She knew exactly which card to play to hit my weakest spot. She knew what Henry meant to me, and she knew it was the final leverage she possessed to pressure me. Don't use Dad to guilt-trip me, I said through clenched teeth. I'm not guilting you. Orch, I'm begging you. Please, Isabella, just come home. Even if it's just to talk. Every instinct inside me screamed to refuse, to protect myself, and to stay inside the safe fortress I had built in Denver. But another voice spoke softly from deep down, my father's voice. You are stronger than your anger, Bella. Don't let anger make your choices for you. I'll think about it, I finally said. Orch. That's all I'm asking. But Mom, if I come back, I am definitely not coming to pretend everything is fine. I'm not coming back to pose for Instagram photos or make anyone feel better about themselves. I am going to say things you won't want to hear, and this time, you are going to sit there and listen. A suffocating silence fell over the line. I'll call you tomorrow with my decision. Orch. I hung up before she could respond. I stood by the window, clutching my phone tight. Outside, the Denver snow continued to fall. My mother wanted me home. My sister wanted to latch onto my success, and my late father was being used as a bargaining chip. I had to make a choice. Was I strong enough to face them head-on, or smart enough to walk away? Orch. I opened my laptop and pulled up the Delta Airlines booking page. Search flights. Denver to Phoenix, nonstop, one way. December 26th, 9 a.m. First class. Why not? I was worth over $800 million now. I looked at the screen, my finger hovering over the confirm payment button. I wasn't going back to Phoenix to reconcile. Orch. I wasn't going back to make peace or pretend everything was normal. I was going back to say the things I should have said 10 years ago. I was going back to stand before the family that once wrote me off as worthless and force them to look at who I had become. Not for revenge and not for their validation. Just for absolute closure. So I could finally live my life truly free. Orch. I clicked confirm payment. A few seconds later, the confirmation email popped up. Your flight is confirmed. Destination. Phoenix. I closed my laptop and watched the screen go dark. Tomorrow I would face my family. Tomorrow I would speak the whole truth. And whatever happened next, I would finally be free. Orch. Just as I made my decision and stood up from the couch, my phone began vibrating wildly once again. This time, it wasn't reporters chasing an exclusive headline, tech icons, or my colleagues. It was my extended family. The vast web known as the Wright family network had caught wind of the news like wildfire. Porch. Suddenly, everyone was scrambling to reconnect with me, and everyone had something to say. Aunt Barbara, Cousin Michael, Uncle Richard. Names I hadn't seen on my phone screen in years. I had almost forgotten a few of them even existed. It was hilarious how an $850 million net worth had the magical ability to bring back the dead and cure long-term amnesia. Porch. I stared cold-eyed as the notifications stacked up on my lock screen, leaving every single one unanswered. Every flashing name served as a reminder of the holidays I wasn't invited to, the birthdays entirely forgotten, and the family group chat I was never allowed to join. Porch. They were swarming in now, not because they cared about me, but because the television screen had just informed them of my value. I observed the messages with a detached chill, sizing up the absurd comedy of it all. Aunt Barbara hadn't spoken a word to me in 5 years. Her last reach-out was a sarcastic comment on one of my Facebook posts. Porch. Now her text read, "Dearest Isabella, I always knew you were a special child. We simply must catch up over lunch next week." Cousin Michael had borrowed $3,000 from me back in 2019, claiming he had cash flow issues with a startup, and then vanished into thin air. His text read, "Cousin, so proud of you." Porch. Hey, I actually have a fantastic business idea recently, and I'd love to pitch it to a business titan like you. Uncle Richard sat at the Thanksgiving table 7 years ago, pointed right at my face in front of everyone, and declared that quitting my banking job was an arrogant, foolish mistake. Now he wrote, "Isabella, your father would be so proud of you if he were alive." Porch. I used to tell your mother all the time that you were bound for greatness. Every message followed the exact same formula: fake enthusiasm, rewritten history, and a subtle, or sometimes completely shameless, ask. Not a single person apologized for a decade of cold shoulder. Not a single person admitted to treating me like the family shame. Porch. They simply collectively agreed to pretend the last 10 years had never happened, as if I should drop to my knees and thank them for finally deigning to notice me. Right then, a new notification popped up at the top of my screen. Isabella Wright has been added to the group chat Wright family updates. That group chat. Porch. The group chat where, as the eldest daughter and a member of the family, I hadn't been worthy of belonging for an entire decade. I tapped into it and found 47 unread messages waiting. Did everyone see Isabella on the news? Oh my God, I can't believe it. She really should have told us sooner. This is huge news. When is she coming back to Phoenix for a celebration party? Porch. They were talking about me openly, as if I weren't even in the chat, as if I were just a hot gossip topic for their afternoon tea, rather than a living person reading every single word. I typed out a line in the input box and hit send. Hi, everyone. Yes, that's really me on TV. And yes, I am reading every single word you're typing. The group chat went dead silent instantly. Porch. On the screen, the little typing indicator bubbles popped up one by one, then vanished just as quickly. Nobody knew what to say. For the first time in 10 years, they were the ones sitting on pins and needles, squirming in discomfort. The feeling was far more satisfying than I had imagined, yet infinitely sadder than I had hoped. Porch. A few minutes later, a name I knew all too well popped up on my screen. Derek Coleman, my dear brother-in-law. The high-flying corporate lawyer who sat at the Thanksgiving table swirling his wine glass, looking at me like I was incompetent, and informing me that real corporate elites don't waste time on unrealistic startups. Porch. I let the phone ring 4 times, letting the big-shot lawyer wait it out. Right before the 5th ring, I tapped answer. Isabella, finally reached you. His voice was smooth, professional, and completely polished. The exact tone he used when dealing with Wall Street clients he was about to charge top dollar. Porch. Listen, he continued, his tone carrying an unearned intimacy. I know there have been some complicated misunderstandings between you and the family, but I want you to know I've always respected your drive. Really? Respected my drive? I let out a cold laugh. Absolutely. Building a $1 billion company from scratch? That takes extraordinary guts. I've always said so. George. Derek, back at your dining table, you told me to my face that quitting my banking job was throwing away my Ivy League degree. A brief pause caught him off guard. But being a high-priced litigator, he recovered quickly. Oh well, family says things at the dinner table sometimes that they don't really mean. Let's let bygones be bygones, right? Water under the bridge. Porch. I leaned back on the couch, listening in silence as he put on his little show. Anyway, he said, lowering his voice into that practiced hyper-professional tone, the main reason I'm calling is to explore some high-net-worth wealth management strategies our firm handles. With your new financial standing, you absolutely need top-tier asset protection. Porch. I already have a financial advisory team, Derek. Of course. But I'm talking about the inner circle here. Family takes care of family, right? I can secure the best fee structure for you and introduce you to the real power players on Wall Street. So that's what this phone call is about. I interrupted. Pitching your firm's services? Looking for a cut? Porch. Another beat of dead silence. Longer this time. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head as he desperately recalculated his position. I called because we're family, Isabella. I wasn't family last week when I couldn't even get an invitation to your Christmas dinner. The slick mask finally cracked, and his voice hardened. Look, Isabella, I'm extending an olive branch here. Porch. Vanessa is a complete mess right now, and your mother is beside herself. Frankly, this news caught everyone off guard. Off guard? The phrasing was almost funny. What a convenient way to describe finding out how wrong you've been for an entire decade. Isabella, I have to go, Derek. But thanks for the call. It told me everything I needed to know. Porch. Before he could squeeze out another word, I hung up. Amid all the noise and shameless posturing, one name lit up my screen that offered a genuine sense of relief. Dr. Ellen Graves, my old Stanford professor. The woman who saw my potential when I was 25, terrified and unable to draft a decent business plan. Porch. She was the one who set me on this path, the one who believed in me long before I believed in myself. I picked up immediately. Dr. Graves. Isabella. I saw the news. Her voice was warm and direct, stripped of flattery or hidden agendas, just the steady tone of someone who truly cared. I wanted to reach you before the vulture-smelling blood completely overwhelm you. How are you holding up? Porch. I want the truth, not the PR spin you give the press. I let out a long breath, feeling the tension finally drain from my shoulders. She was the first person all day to ask how I was actually feeling. I don't know, Ellen. I thought this moment would feel different. I thought I'd feel better. I offered a bitter smile. Massive success rarely feels as satisfying as we imagine. Porch. Especially when the people who should be celebrating with you are the ones who spent years tearing you down. Ellen's familiar, gentle laugh came through the line. I remember when you walked into my office 12 years ago, Isabella. You had this intense fire in your eyes, desperate to prove yourself. Do you remember what I asked you back then? I do, I said quietly. Porch. I told you I wanted to prove myself to everyone. And what did I tell you? You said everyone was too many people. You told me to pick one person whose opinion actually mattered. So who did you pick? She asked. My father, my voice tightened. But he's gone. Then pick yourself, Isabella. Porch. You're the only person who stayed by your side through this entire 10-year journey. She paused, her tone turning serious. Are you going to see your family? I don't know. My mother is begging me to come back to Phoenix. Do you want to go? I want closure. I want to say the things I've kept bottled up for 10 years. I want to stand in front of them and force them to listen to me. Just once. Porch. Then go. But remember, you're going for yourself, not for them, and never forget, you don't need their validation anymore. You never did. I know, I wiped the corner of my eye. But I think I need to go say goodbye to the girl who used to crave it. After hanging up with Ellen, I sat in the quiet apartment, weighing my options. Every reason to stay, every excuse to go. Porch. Then another notification flashed on my screen. Not a call, not a text, and not that suffocating family group chat. An email. Sender: Sophie Oleman 2016 @gmail.com. Subject: Please read this, Auntie Bella. My heart tightened. With trembling fingers, I opened it. Dear Auntie Bella, I saw you on TV today. You looked so pretty and like a really important person. Orch. Mom and Dad were acting super weird all day. They kept talking about you and a bunch of stuff about money. I don't understand any of that, and I don't care about it either. I just wanted to tell you that I'm so proud of you. I always knew you were special, even when nobody else in this house said so. I keep all your letters safely hidden away. Orch. Whenever I'm sad, I take them out and read them. They always make me feel better. Are you really coming to visit me? I miss you so much. I drew 12 new pictures for you, and I've been saving them so carefully for you to see. I love you, Auntie Bella. Even if you weren't a billionaire, I would still love you. I loved you long before anyone saw you shining on TV. Love, Sophie. Orch. Peace. Please don't be mad at Mom and Dad. They just don't understand things the way we do. I read the email 3 times, tears slipping uncontrollably down my face. For the first time all day, I allowed myself to cry real tears. An 8-year-old child saw through everything the adults in this family refused to acknowledge. When I was nothing in their eyes, a complete failure, she loved me. Orch. While everyone else turned away, Sophie looked at me and saw the real me. She was the only reason I needed to go back. Not for my mother, not for Vanessa, but for the little girl who never stopped believing in me, even when she had to hide her love. I clicked reply immediately. Dear Sophie, I love you too, more than you know. Yes, I'm coming to see you. I'll be there tomorrow. Orch. Save those drawings for me, love. Auntie Bella. I hit send. All my hesitation vanished into thin air. At 9 a.m. on December 26th, the flight lifted off from Denver International Airport. Sitting in the wide leather seat of first class, I watched the snow-capped peaks of the Rockies shrink beneath the gray winter sky. My phone was powered off. Orch. I needed these few hours of total silence to mentally prepare for the storm waiting at the end of the runway. Before turning my phone off, Marcus had sent one last text. Remember, you're not going back to beg for love. You're going back to claim your freedom. If you need backup, call me anytime. I read it 3 times before shutting down the device. Orch. He understood what my family never could. This trip wasn't about reconciliation. It was about closure. It was about releasing the words trapped inside me for 10 years and forcing the people who dragged me down to finally open their eyes. The flight attendant approached with a tray, offering a warm smile. Would you like some champagne, ma'am? No, thank you. Just ice water, please. Orch. I needed absolute clarity. No alcohol to numb the edges, no escaping reality. Just the raw truth and whatever consequences came with it. When I stepped off the plane, Phoenix greeted me with 72 degrees of bright, warm sunshine, a stark contrast to Denver's freezing snow. Carrying the chill of a Colorado winter, I landed in a city that felt like mid-spring. The desert air hit my face. Orch. Familiar, yet entirely foreign. I grew up breathing this air. I spent 18 years in this city before fleeing to Stanford and eventually building a life in Denver. Now, I was back. Not as the daughter who ran away with her tail between her legs, and not as the burden they wrote off as a failure. I returned as someone completely different. Someone they didn't know how to handle. Orch. At the rental counter, I picked up a low-key silver Honda Accord. No flashy luxury cars, no chauffeured rides. I didn't want them thinking I came to parade my wealth. That would only hand them fresh ammunition to feel resentful rather than reflect on what they had done. I wanted to show up as myself. The person they never bothered to get to know. Orch. The drive from the airport to my mother's house in Scottsdale took about 40 minutes. 40 minutes to remember who I used to be, and to settle on who I wanted to be now. The Phoenix streets unfolded like an old map, ghosts lurking at every intersection. Orch. I passed the sprawling shopping mall where my 16-year-old self took her first job, folding clothes at a department store to save for college tuition. My mother had fought it back then, wanting me to work at a high-end boutique owned by her friend because it sounded more respectable. But I chose the department store because I earned that job on my own. I passed my old high school. Torch. I had graduated as valedictorian, but Margaret was never satisfied with that. She constantly pushed me toward the popular social scene, hoping I'd become homecoming queen. When I accepted my academic honors instead of a tiara, she looked at me with something resembling disappointment, as if intelligence were merely a consolation prize for not being pretty enough. Torch. I slowed down as I drove past the church where we held my father's funeral. The parking lot was empty now, but I could still picture the long line of black cars, feel the crushing weight as they lowered his casket into the dirt, and hear little Sophie naively asking where Grandpa went. Torch. I drove through the intersection where, 10 years ago, on the day I quit my banking job, I pulled over and sobbed so hard I could barely hold the steering wheel. I sat at that red light for 20 minutes, terrified of the future, panicked by what I had done, and mortified that my mother might be right about me ruining my life. Torch. I built my career in Denver largely to escape these streets, these heavy memories, and these suffocating people. Now, I was driving straight back into the center of it all. A massive billboard appeared along the highway. Welcome to Phoenix, Valley of the Sun. For them, it was the Valley of the Sun. For me, it had always been a valley of shadows. At a red light, my phone buzzed. Torch. A text from Vanessa. Mom is losing her mind. She's been compulsively cleaning since 6 a.m. Fair warning, I didn't reply. I knew Margaret's habits. Whenever she felt anxious or completely out of control, she tried to control the dust. I wondered coldly what she thought she could scrub away before my arrival. 10 years of neglect? Cruel remarks? Calculated silence? Torch. Some stains don't wash out, no matter how expensive the cleaner is. The car turned onto the familiar neighborhood street. The house looked identical to my memories, a single-story ranch with a terracotta roof and a manicured lawn. The wind chimes my father hung 20 years ago were still on the porch. The rose bushes my mother fussed over every spring were right where he left them. Torch. Everything was preserved in amber, like a museum display showing off the happy family we used to be. I parked in the driveway, resting my hands on the steering wheel, and sat in silence for a moment. This was it. No turning back. I took a deep breath and opened the door. The front door flew open almost immediately. They had been watching, waiting. Torch. My mother stepped out first, wearing her best clothes, pressed linen pants, her signature pearl earrings, and fresh lipstick. It was her armor for putting on a flawless performance. Behind her stood Vanessa, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Derek hovered near the back, phone in hand, sizing up the situation like an analyst evaluating a merger. Torch. Then someone pushed past them all, storming down the porch steps like a tiny hurricane. Sophie slammed straight into my arms, wrapping her arms tight around my waist and burying her face in my coat. Auntie Bella, you're here! You really came! I knew you would! I dropped to my knees, pulling her into a tight hug. A real, unfiltered embrace. The first genuine warmth I'd felt in days. Torch. Hey, sweetheart, I kissed her hair. I missed you so much. I missed you more, she mumbled into my coat. I missed you to infinity and back. She pulled back, staring into my face with the serious, clear eyes unique to 8-year-olds. Are you okay? You look tired. I'm great now that I'm seeing you, I smiled. Sophie leaned close to my ear, dropping her voice like a little secret agent. Torch. Everyone has been acting super weird since the news came on. Dad won't stop talking about money, Mom keeps crying in the bathroom, and Grandma keeps wiping down things that are already clean. She paused, looking at me earnestly. How are you feeling? I feel like, to you, I'm still just Auntie Bella. That's what matters most. That's the best news I've heard all week, she beamed. Torch. My mother approached us, opening her arms for a hug. Isabella, you finally made it. The embrace felt stiff on my end. I didn't hug her back, but I didn't pull away either. Look at you. She held me by the shoulders, stepping back to inspect me like an artwork that had suddenly shot up in value. You look good. A little thin, though. Are you eating enough? The same script. Orch. She said those exact words every time I came home, as if nothing had changed. As if the nationwide acquisition news, the confrontational phone call, and 10 years of total silence had never happened. She was putting on a masterclass performance. A loving mother welcoming her successful daughter home. I wondered who the audience was supposed to be. The neighbors across the street? Herself? Or me? Orch. Come inside, she said warmly. I made your favorite pot roast and mashed potatoes, just like old times. I followed her up the steps and through the front door. In the entryway, I stopped cold. The wall was covered in family photos I'd looked at my whole life, but something new had been added. Recent news article clippings had been printed, framed, and hung up overnight. Orch. She had re-added me to the family wall in a single night, as if I'd been here all along, as if 10 years of exclusion could be wiped clean by a quick trip to Target for a few cheap picture frames. Sophie tugged on my hand. I have all 12 drawings ready, Auntie Bella. Plus I made a special one this morning of us as superheroes with awesome capes. I can't wait to see them, I smiled down at her. Orch. Then her little face clouded over. Auntie Bella. What is it, sweetie? Are you and Mom going to fight? She's really scared lately. She thinks you hate her. I froze. An 8-year-old child was begging me to show mercy to the mother who had deliberately locked me out of the family. I don't hate anyone, Sophie, I said softly. I just have a few things I need to clear up. Orch. Okay, she nodded. Just don't be too mean. She's still my mom. The weight of her words settled heavily on my shoulders. I nodded, letting her pull me into the living room where the rest of the family waited. The next hour was a masterclass in suffocating tension. My mother fussed over serving food, endlessly bringing up polite topics. Orch. Derek carefully dropped business questions about the MedInsight acquisition, clearly fishing for details he could use to brag to his Wall Street clients at the golf course. Vanessa barely spoke. She sat quietly, staring at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. In that room, only Sophie was real. She chattered away about school, her new hamster, and her piano lessons. Orch. I answered every question with practiced grace, praising the food even though the pot roast tasted like cardboard. I played the part of the successful daughter visiting home, while keeping my true thoughts locked deep inside. When the uncomfortable lunch finally wound down, I excused myself to use the restroom. Orch. I walked down the hallway I'd traversed 1,000 times, passing my old bedroom door, the closet I used to hide in when my parents argued, and old photos of a family I no longer recognized. On my way back, someone stepped out from around the corner, blocking my path. Vanessa. This stretch of the hallway was lined with old bookshelves our father used to keep. Orch. The books he read to us as children, Dickens, Hemingway, Fitzgerald, sat quietly in place, preserved just like everything else in this house. Isabella, wait. Her voice was entirely different from the sharp, dismissive tone she used on the phone 3 days ago. It was softer, carrying a noticeable shake. I need to talk to you alone. Orch. Before we go back to the living room and Mom starts her performance again. What performance? I looked at her coldly. The one where she pretends everything is perfect and forces us all to play along because it's easier for her. I studied my sister, looking for the trap, waiting for another round of emotional manipulation. Orch. But Vanessa just looked exhausted, completely weighed down by something heavy. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. I know you hate me, she looked at the floor. I know I deserve it. I don't hate you, Vanessa. You should. I was cruel to you for years. And not just because Mom expected it, but because I wanted to be. Orch. The confession landed heavily between us, unexpectedly direct and painfully raw. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because I can't carry it anymore. She lifted her head, her swollen eyes meeting mine. When I saw you on the news, when I saw what you built while we all treated you like trash, something inside me completely broke. She paused, swallowing hard. Orch. Isabella, There's something I have to tell you. Something I did. Something even Mom doesn't know about. My guard went up instantly. What are you talking about? She glanced nervously toward the living room, where the sound of our mother clearing plates drifted down the hall. Not here. Can we go somewhere private? Dad's old office. Vanessa, what did you do? Her hands trembled violently. Torch. She looked at me with something I hadn't seen in her for years. Pure fear. I'm the reason you stopped getting invited to family gatherings. It wasn't just Mom being disappointed. I made it happen on purpose. I told Mom things that weren't true. Things that convinced her you wanted nothing to do with this family. I froze, the blood running cold in my veins. You sabotaged me? Torch. Yes, her voice was barely a whisper. For years. And I need to tell you why. She grabbed my wrist, pulling me toward the door at the end of the hall that led into our father's office. Please, give me 10 minutes. After that, you can hate me for the rest of your life. Just give me 10 minutes. I think I have the right to know what I'm walking into. You do. Torch. That's why I'm telling you now, before Mom gets the chance to rewrite history again. I followed her in silence, stepping past the fake family photos and toward my father's office. It was where Henry had worked, where he wrote the letter I still carried in my pocket. I didn't know what Vanessa was about to confess, but I had a feeling the secret was big enough to destroy her. Torch. And I was about to find out if it would destroy me too. The office door swung open, and I stepped into the space for the first time in 8 years. Nothing had changed. My mother had treated it as a shrine to her late husband, keeping every detail intact. In the center sat the large oak desk, its edges smoothed by decades of use. Torch. The leather chair behind it still seemed to hold the impression of his frame. Bookshelves lined the walls, packed with accounting ledgers, philosophy texts, and the novels he read to us when we were young. Remarkably, a faint scent of pipe tobacco still lingered in the air. Torch. After all these years, the smell persisted, as if he had just stepped out for coffee and might walk back through the door at any moment. In this entire house, this was the one room that used to feel safe. When I was little, Dad always let me sit in the corner and read while he worked. Every few minutes, he'd look up from his papers and smile at me. Torch. That look made me feel like my existence was a gift, that I was someone worth seeing and valuing. After he passed away, I never had the courage to step back into this room. There were too many ghosts, too much grief. Now, here I was, preparing to hear my sister confess how she had added even more ghosts to the space. Vanessa closed the door, leaning her back against the frame. Torch. Her hands shook so violently, she couldn't look me in the eye. She stared at the floor, the corner of the desk, anywhere but at me. Let me get it all out, she began. Please don't interrupt me until I'm finished. I crossed my arms, standing near the desk. Go ahead. It started 7 years ago, right after Dad died. Her voice remained low. You were in Denver, launching your startup. Torch. Mom was a complete mess, and I stayed behind to pick up the pieces. I became her sole support, her confidant, her perfect daughter. I stayed silent, listening. That first Thanksgiving after Dad passed, you called. You said you wanted to come home. She took a deep breath. Do you remember what Mom told you? She said it wasn't a good time. Do you know why? Vanessa's voice dropped even lower. Torch. Because I told her you were the one making excuses. I told her you complained to me on the phone, saying you didn't actually want to come back and were only offering out of obligation. I told her you found the house atmosphere suffocating and preferred staying in Denver to work. The air left my lungs. I never said that, I said through clenched teeth. I know. She still couldn't look at me. Torch. From then on, every time you tried to reach out, I intercepted it. I twisted your words so Mom believed you were looking for any excuse to run away from us. When you sent birthday cards, I told her your assistant probably bought them to go through the motions. When you called to check in, I told her, after hanging up, that you sounded annoyed, like you couldn't wait to get off the line. Torch. Drop by drop, I poisoned the well, day after day, year after year. My hands curled into tight fists at my sides, my nails digging into my palms. Why? My voice shook. Why on earth would you do that? Because I was terrified of you. Terrified of me? You got out, Isabella. Orch. You escaped this house, Mom's control, and all the expectations of what a right girl should be, just to chase your own ambition. I stayed. I did everything right, checking every box on her list. I was scared to death that if you came back, if you brought even a fraction of your success into this house and Mom saw who you were becoming, she'd realize she bet on the wrong daughter. Orch. Vanessa walked to the window, turning her back to me. Her voice sounded hollow. It got worse over time. The more determined and successful you looked from afar, the more desperately I felt I had to tear you down. 3 years ago, when Denver Business Journal featured you for landing that hospital contract, I hid the magazine so Mom would never see it. Orch. I told her your company was a fraud on the brink of bankruptcy. When Sophie started drawing pictures for you in secret, I tried to stop her. I told her you were too busy to care and would throw them straight into the trash. But she sent them anyway. I know, my eyes burned. She had way more courage than you. Vanessa's shoulders slumped. You're right, Orch. She was far braver than I ever was. She turned around, tears streaming down her face. All those Christmases you missed, every family dinner you weren't at, that was all my doing. I convinced Mom that you didn't want us, that your absence was your own arrogant choice. And she believed me because it was easier. Orch. To her, framing you as the heartless daughter who abandoned the family was far easier than admitting we drove you away. I handed her a convenient excuse to give up on you, and she took it. The walls of the room felt like they were closing in, the air growing thin. 10 years of rejection. 10 years of self-doubt. 10 lonely Christmases. Orch. Countless late nights asking myself what I had done wrong, why my own mother couldn't love me, and the answer stood right in front of me, bearing my sister's face. Do you have any idea how much damage you caused me? My voice rose to a harsh whisper. I know. I thought I was doing what was necessary, but I know now. I'm so sorry, Isabella. I really am. Sorry? The word tasted like ash. Orch, you think sorry fixes any of this? I know it doesn't. I know nothing I say can make up for it. Then why tell me now? Because I have money now. Because your calculating husband wants to siphon off a piece of my wealth. Her face flushed deep red as if slapped. No! I'm telling you because I can't live with the lies anymore. How convenient given the timing, I scoffed. Orch, I know how it looks. But seeing you on national watching the world celebrate you while realizing what you built entirely on your own, during the decade I tried to destroy you, something inside me broke. Good, I said, without an ounce of sympathy. It needed to break. Vanessa sobbed openly. Do you want to know the real reason? The root of it all? I was jealous of you. Orch, sick, obsessively jealous. You were always the brilliant one. Dad looked at you like you hung the stars in the sky. Mom chose me simply because I was obedient, easy to manage, and fit neatly into her mold. But Dad chose you. He saw something in you he never saw in me, and I hated you for it. I spent my whole life competing with you, Isabella, when you didn't even know a competition existed. Orch. I got married young because that's what a good daughter was supposed to do. I had 2 kids because that was the next box to check. I stayed close to Mom because this family needed a dutiful child. Yet every accomplishment felt completely empty because none of it was what I actually wanted. I wanted to be you. I wanted the courage to walk away and never look back. Orch, do you know what it feels like to be the perfect daughter? It's a cage. A golden cage, but a cage nonetheless. Every choice I made was to keep Mom happy. Now I'm 31, married to a calculating man who views my sister's success as an investment opportunity. Raising 2 kids I barely have time to truly know because I'm always performing the role of a perfect mother. You ran away. Orch. I stayed, and I made you pay the price for my own cowardice. Something shifted slightly inside me. It wasn't forgiveness. Not now, maybe never. But it was something resembling understanding. I realized my sister's cruelty stemmed from her own deep, festering wounds, though those wounds were no excuse for what she had done to me. You could have chosen to leave at any time, Vanessa. Torch. Every single day of these 10 years. I know, and that's the part that hurts most. I built my own prison, then blamed a truly free person for my lack of freedom. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, then stepped toward my father's old bookshelf. There's one more thing. Something I stumbled across last year. I never dared tell you, and I never dared do anything with it. What thing? Torch. She reached into the gap behind a row of Dickens novels, pulling out a yellowed envelope. On it was my father's familiar handwriting. To Vanessa. When you are ready. I found it behind these books last year while helping Mom look for old tax documents. Her hands trembled. I read it, and I haven't been able to look at myself in the mirror ever since. She tremblingly handed me the envelope. Torch. I pulled out a single sheet of paper covered in my father's distinct, rounded handwriting with its familiar rightward slant. Before I could even start reading, Vanessa was already softly reciting the words through her sobs. My dearest Vanessa, if you are reading this, I am likely no longer around. I am so sorry I wasn't able to say these things to your face. Torch. I know you've always felt I favored Isabella. I know you often felt invisible in this family. But I saw you, sweetheart. I always saw you. The difference was that Isabella needed me to speak up for her, because the world is constantly trying to strip away the voice of a girl like her. You, on the other hand, had your mother's complete and total support, for better or worse. Torch. I was simply trying to balance the scales. But I need you to listen carefully, Vanessa. Do not view your sister as your rival. Protect her. She is stepping into brutal battles you cannot even imagine, and she is going to desperately need a family member who believes in her. Be her ally, not her enemy. Torch. There are far too many people in this world trying to pull women down. We cannot let this family become one of them. I loved you both in different ways, but that love was equal. Choose love over fear. Choose your sister. With all my heart, Dad. Vanessa collapsed against the desk, burying her face in her hands in utter agony. He knew. Somehow, he knew everything. Torch. He knew how extraordinary you would become, and he foresaw the ugliness inside me, trying to stop it before it could take root. But I failed him, Isabella. I failed you, and I failed everyone. I picked up the letter and read it again in silence, tracing my fingers over the familiar script. He wrote me a letter too, I said softly, before he passed away. Torch. He told me to keep going when things felt hopeless, and never to let anyone put out the light in my eyes. He believed in both of us, just in different ways. He saw us far more clearly than we ever saw each other. Torch. For a quiet moment, the two of us stood in our father's office, each holding a letter written to us by a man who was no longer here, a man who had loved us both, and tried with all his might to save us from our own weaknesses. Just then, a faint sound came from outside the door. We both froze and turned our heads. Margaret was standing by the half-open door, her face as pale as a sheet. Torch. Her eyes moved from Vanessa's tear-stained face to the yellowed paper in my hand, finally resting on the hidden gap behind the bookshelf. "What are you two doing in this room?" she asked, her voice carrying a heavily suppressed tremor. "What is that? What does that letter say?" Vanessa instinctively took a step back, the deep-seated fear of her mother taking over even in this moment. Torch. But I didn't move, nor did I try to hide the paper. "It's a letter, Mom." I looked her straight in the eye. "A letter Dad left for Vanessa." Margaret's expression shifted rapidly, from confusion to shock, then settling into a hardened, defensive posture. "Where did you find that?" "It was hidden," I said coldly, "just like so many other things in this house." Torch. The three of us stood at a standstill in that small space. The father who had tried to save us from mutual destruction was gone, but the words he left behind now lay stretched out between us, acting less like a bridge and more like a ticking time bomb waiting to go off. "Mom, there's something I have to tell you." Vanessa's voice was barely a whisper. "About what?" "About what I did to my sister." Torch. "About everything." Margaret looked at her younger daughter, then at her elder. "What on earth did you do, Vanessa?" I pulled out my father's old leather chair. "I think you'd better sit down, Mom." The confession I thought was meant solely for me was about to turn into a full family reckoning. And my mother, the woman who had spent a decade comfortably believing her eldest daughter was an ungrateful, cold-hearted stranger, was about to hear the raw truth. Her favored, picture-perfect younger daughter was the exact person who tore us apart. Henry's office was about to become a courtroom, and not a single person sitting inside was innocent. With 3 people packed inside, the spacious office suddenly felt suffocatingly cramped. Margaret stood by the doorway, her gaze darting back and forth between her daughters. She looked at the wet tear tracks on Vanessa's face, then at the yellowed letter in my hand. The heavy atmosphere in the room was thick enough to choke on. She looked smaller than I remembered, no longer the high and mighty figure who had controlled the family narrative for decades, but simply an ordinary woman forced to confront a truth she couldn't spin with PR or clean away with dust cloths. "What is going on here?" she demanded, trying to summon her old authority. "What letter? What did your father write?" I met her gaze without flinching. For decades, she held total control in this house, deciding who was worthy, who got invited, and how people were spoken about. But standing in her late husband's office, surrounded by truths she could no longer dodge, she possessed no power at all. "Sit down, Mom," I said. "I don't need to sit down." "Yes, you do." A firm, unyielding tone rang in my voice, a confidence she had never heard from me before. It stopped her right in her tracks. She walked over to the leather chair Henry used to occupy and sat down, her hands gripping the armrests as if bracing for a high-impact crash. "Vanessa has something to tell you." I looked at her coldly. "And then, all of us are going to have a conversation that is 10 years overdue." Vanessa stood near the window, not daring to look our mother in the eye. Her voice was weak and fragmented. "Mom, I did something awful, and I've kept it from you for years." She then repeated everything she had just confessed to me, the intercepted calls, the twisted messages, the deliberate lies. Lies that formed an invisible wall, locking me out of every holiday, every birthday, and every family gathering for a decade. Every word she spoke landed like a heavy stone thrown into still water, sending ripples outward that irrevocably altered everything they touched. Margaret's expression shifted continuously as Vanessa spoke. At first came sheer disbelief. "That's not true, Vanessa." "How could that be?" Then came deep confusion. "But you were the one who told me Isabella didn't want to come back. You said she wanted to cut ties with this family." Finally, a chilling, slow realization set in. She finally understood that her favorite daughter had been manipulating her like a puppet for 10 years. "You actually lied to me about your own sister?" Margaret's voice trembled. Vanessa flinched, but she didn't back down. "I was trying to protect you, Mom. Isabella was always so hard to manage. I thought if she wasn't around, everything would just be easier." "Easier for whom?" My voice cut in like a blade. "For you? For Mom? Because it certainly wasn't easier for me." Margaret's eyes darted between the two of us, her face turning pale. "All those years, all those Christmases, I truly believed you didn't want us anymore." "You believed what Vanessa wanted you to believe," I pointed out relentlessly.